Welcome to the Biohacking Beauty podcast, where we explore cutting edge strategies to help you achieve radiant, youthful skin. I'm your host, Amitai Eshel, and as always, we are here to simplify the science behind skin health, biohacking, and beauty so you can look and feel your best. Today, we have a special guest, Awais Spall. It's actually his second appearance here. Awais is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and the founder of Integrative Oasis, where he combines ancient Ayurvedic principles with the latest biohacking technologies, including peptide therapy, to help his clients optimize their health and also their skin health. With a background in formulation chemistry and a deep knowledge of Ayurveda passed down through generation, he actually learned it from his grandfather. Awais has made it his mission to guide others through the power of peptides, bioregulators, and personalized medicine. In today's episode, we are doing a deep dive into the fascinating world of peptides and how they can revolutionize your skin health. Awais will share his expertise on the different types of peptides, their regenerative properties, and how they can enhance your skin's youthful appearance from the inside out. Whether you're curious about the role of peptides in collagen production, healing, or overall skin rejuvenation, you are in for quite a treat. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Young Goose, a company that I co founded with my lovely wife, Anastasia, um, which basically is the world's first biohacking skincare company. But really, what it is topical skin optimization. But in any case, get ready for a deep dive into how modern science meets ancient wisdom to optimize not just your skin, but your entire body as a whole. So let's get started. Okay, welcome again, Awais Spall, to the Biohacking Beauty podcast.
It's amazing to be here for a second time.
Yeah. That's it's not everyone gets a second time, but Awais. So as we discussed offline, we had an idea of doing something a little bit more constructive to our audience, because you are a true wealth of knowledge through obviously your practice, Integrative Oasis, and you are the person that I send people to if they have questions about peptides, if they want, if they need any kind of health optimization that is accompanied by a trained professional. And what we wanted to do this time is kind of run through your, top choices as far as like skin health, age, reversal, whatever you want to call this. So I'll leave the stage to you, and let's start a discussion around that.
Amazing. So that's where all those smart people are coming from. I was wondering.
No, that's not the ones that I sent. No, I'm kidding.
So amazing. So yeah, they appreciate that warm introduction. And yes, my practices focuses on a lot of functional medicine, integrative medicine. Really, I'm passionate about the microbiome and peptides. And a lot of people have an interest in peptides, and they want to do often peptide protocols. And oftentimes it's just the most efficient way to do a lot of things clinically. So yeah, I'm happy to start the discussion.
First of all, so let's start the discussion. I think, around skin health and rejuvenation.
Okay.
I think we should kind of separate between, hey, what can I do that will improve the appearance of my skin, different types of appearances, like color and texture, etc. And then there's also the, hey, I want to recover from, whether it is a traumatic event or a facelift, a laser, whatever that is. How do I kind of maximize my results there? So maybe we should start as far as like standalones, what are some of the things that you're aware of that within the the peptide realm, and we can also talk about like microbiome interactions with different things that you recommend that would really show difference in skin quality.
Right. So I think one thing I like to think about is what are the sort of clinical limitations to someone's skin health, right?
Hmm.
And what do I see clinically in my practice is a lot of hepatic stuff, a lot of
Hmm.
liver issues
Hmm.
leading to inflammation of the skin, leading to, issues with fibroblast production, leading to issues with collagen synthesis, right?
Hmm.
So those are sort of clinical considerations that are really, really important that need to be resolved, right? Like
Yeah.
someone can have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and have be hypermobile, and the collagen can start to appear a certain way. It can start to look very, very elastic, and it
Hmm.
can start to lose the rigidity and tightness that we want, right? In those types of situations, we really want to be targeted in our approach to figure
Hmm.
out, well, what's causing that breakdown of collagen, right? Is it a microbe? Is it a toxin? Is it something else? Is it some sort of orthomolecular thing that we need to address?
Yeah.
So it's all about figuring out, like ruling those things out first, and kind of
Yeah.
like, we spoke about this the last time, is really from a microbiome perspective, thinking inside out. So really starting with that core and understanding that we have to fix the roots of the tree first.
By the way, even if you talk about like the demand for collagen as a whole, because it is true to say, hey, your the cartilage in your knees, although demands collagen, it is a different type of collagen. The one that you have in the face, gut, actually pretty similar, but gut, um, even like things like your eyes and your nails and whatever, they place a demand for the building blocks that your skin's collagen needs. Anything that places demand on vitamin C would affect how collagen behaves and etc. But I think so to your point, first of all, we want to make sure that we are not kind of dividing our resources to a million different ways. Like if I have permeable gut, or if I have, you mentioned hypermobility, which places a lot of demand on like collagen repair, etc., and scarring, obviously. Um, and again, maybe like RA that's flaring up or something like that. All of those things would then your body would prioritize those rather than just creating, a beautiful, you know, skin texture or whatever.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Those root cause things are just super important, and trying to inject a ton of skin peptides or other
Hmm.
peptides, it doesn't make sense when you have those. Another one to add to that list of clinical considerations that you provided could be like a high level of reactive oxygen species from viral
Yeah.
disruption of some kind, and
Long COVID.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Similarly, a vascular issue resulting
Hmm.
from that, right? Like
Yeah.
a coagulopathy, a blood congestion, or something
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so let's say we ruled out chronic lingering conditions that are taxing the system. Let's say we ruled them out. I mean, I think this is a rabbit hole we can get into. Like, obviously, you need to go to like an integrative, holistic, whatever you call it, like dental office. Need to make sure that we mentioned like oxidative stress. We need to make sure like we don't have like metals in our mouth, whatever.
Hmm.
There are many things there that we want to make sure that they are aligned. You got to get your blood work down, everything. Uh, we can talk about metabolomics like later, which obviously we both. I think we should kind of have a podcast about metabolomics separately, but um, um, let's say we rule them out. The person is living a healthy life, wellness oriented life. Not everything is perfect, but they're kind of on top of things, monitoring liver enzymes, whatever you want. Now, how do we just what decisions can they make around, around peptides, around things like that, that are going to make a difference in their skin, obviously short term but also long term. How do you build like a peptide protocol for life that will provide optimal performance in your skin?
That's a great question, and I think even with a question like that, there has to be a little bit of a precision medicine approach.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we're at the framework of the problems have been ruled out and or healed and or addressed, we
Mm-hmm.
still need to understand that person's unique genetic and genomic profile to see kind of what are the gaps that we can address and fill, right? But that being said, now actually to pause on that, for some people, they're gonna need a little bit more repair, right?
Mm-hmm.
And certain genes that are related to collagen production and repair. And, I've done a little bit of work with professional athletes, and sometimes they'll burn through collagen really, really fast.
Yeah.
And it'll show up in their joint health, and we have to supplement higher levels of collagen, which
Mm-hmm.
isn't healthy or normal for the average person or the person who's able to sustain collagen production, right?
Mm-hmm.
So so in those situations, we may want to have something like TB500 to be
Mm-hmm.
supportive of them, right? So, but I think for most people in general, the king of skincare peptides is GHK-Cu.
Mm-hmm.
That's GHK with copper. And I'm also, so I'd love to kind of talk a little bit about the biochemistry of that
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think really, really interesting. And I know, you know, your listeners are super into probably this peptide if they've heard of it. And I think it can be helpful to understand that biochemistry a little bit, and also what are the normal protocols, and then what are the fringe rabbit hole protocols that are just ridiculous and insane. And
Yes.
I've seen some people like accelerate their skin
Yes.
healing
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
hack.
I
Go
would say just the way that you said it, by the way, should intrigue people because you called it GHK. You had
yeah,
a nice pause there, and then you said CU. People don't realize that the peptide is GHK. You know what I'm saying? Like people
right.
don't realize that it is a copper-bound peptide
Mm-hmm.
because when people get IVs of it, they actually get only GHK, for example, just as an
Right.
example. So
Mhm.
yeah, let's get into that.
Absolutely, and the copper component is really important.
Yeah.
Uh, there was a period of time where when peptides were prescribable, and I was working with people that had prescriptions, and then they couldn't some of the pharmacies couldn't fill GHK-Cu, so they were filling GHK only without the copper bound. It's not the same. The results are not the same for skin healing,
No.
by far, not even comparable. So number one with GHKCU is it's really helping with collagen production. It's activating TGF, transforming growth factor beta 1. And that can be a little bit confusing for some people who are coming from the mold world or the chronic inflammation,
Mm-hmm.
inflammatory illness world. And they're like, wait a second, isn't that a bad thing? Uh, because that's often measured to say that there's immune inflammation. And no, it's not. We're looking at different sort of things when we're measuring that, and we're talking about activating this.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, and it's still part of the immune system. It's an immunogenic response. Um, and then also along with TGF beta 1, we're also improving fibroblast activity. Obviously, fibroblasts increase the extracellular matrix proteins like collagen and elastin. Um, and also, this is where the functional work is important, where we want to have that healthy extracellular matrix environment, which is a big talking point in integrative medicine and integrative medicine adjacent biochemistry. But actually, GHK can help to clean up that environment as well.
Mm-hmm.
That extracellular matrix environment, and then obviously there's the discussion around MMPs, the matrix
Yeah.
melano proteinases, and wound repair. We can just go down the list. But another one that I think is really important, and especially right now in this age, is VEGF, which is vascular endothelial growth factor, and the supporting in the production of nitric oxide.
Okay, but that's a great point. Well,
Yeah.
let's stop before we get into vasculature.
Mhm.
Let's talk for a second about that intracellular matrix and why that
Yes.
is important. Because and we see it, by the way, with resveratrol, sorry, with spermidine.
Mhm. Mhm.
A lot of what we need to do in medicine, and I'm sure people are sick of hearing that. I know I am, unfortunately,
Mhm.
is get out of the way, right? Let the body heal itself, etc.
Mhm.
Although it is correct as a blanket statement, a lot of the times the get out of the way is like literally you need to get out. You need to get hindering components out of the way. You need to distill a positive signal by reducing the negative signal. When there is a lot of interference and a lot of taxing on the system is not going to ramp up its activity, so to speak. So maybe we can, you know, focus for a second and a half there on the extracellular matrix there.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, what you just said around you framed the discussion around vitalism essentially,
Hmm.
which is that the human body, which is a belief and a debate that is the human body 100% vital and able to repair itself, all is the only thing that we're doing, removing the bad stuff and just allowing it to heal.
Or we're Brian Johnson and we're saying the body's trying to kill itself, which I obviously disagree with. But yeah.
Exactly. So those are the two extremes. We'll call one
Hmm.
nihilism, we'll call the other Brian Johnson, right? So so in that sort of framing, I think a lot of integrative medicine was very near vitalism, close to almost a pure vitalism.
Hmm.
But I think from what you just said there around the extracellular matrix, I think we're moving a little bit away from that. We're like sometimes it just doesn't happen, right? And when we look at like the work of Robert Naviau around cellular metabolism, cell danger response, right? He's done a lot of work around mitochondria and how mitochondria responds has this CDR, cell danger
Yeah.
response, that's triggering this broad cascade and sort of affecting energy on a very grand, global
Hmm.
level. When we look at some of that work, when we see the relationship between what's happening inside the cells and outside of the cells in that extracellular matrix space, we
Hmm.
see that there's sometimes, even with just glucose metabolism and sort of the new, so much research happening in cellular metabolism, where that space, that extracellular space, can get kind of messy, and
Yeah.
it needs some more repair, and that can sometimes affect directly endothelial health, um, you know,
Yeah.
and vascular health.
Yes, yes. That's you're tempting me to go into vascular health because what you just described about the mitochondria, I call it splayed state. Right now, they don't. The terminology changed to an elongated shape of the mitochondria.
Mhm,
But I would say, you mentioned MMPs, especially MMP2, which is driven by cortisol,
mhm,
and you mentioned glucose metabolism, which is what drives uh, glycation or advanced glycation end products. These two things, in my opinion, first of all, these two things, even if we zoom out of the extracellular matrix, they are driven by our connection with our human environment,
mhm,
by our perception, and obviously that's where we get to a more I would say spiritual discussion, but the discussion around mental health and obviously also don't consume sugar, blah blah blah, but also your mental health will also affect heavily your expression of AGEs of that
mhm,
metabolites of or that end products of sugar metabolism of glucose metabolism.
mhm, mhm,
So although I just want to mention that this is something that obviously the better, I call it the American president effect,
Uh-huh.
where American presidents age within 4 to 8 years. If you're not Donald Trump, they age like two decades, right?
Mhm.
And that is because of those type of stressors.
Mhm.
Um, and that's really cool. But to connect to what you are saying is you mentioned mitochondrial state,
Mhm.
and then you mentioned again vasculature, which is crazy that you can connect the dots so well, because
Mhm.
what happens is when we have mitochondrial dysfunction, we cannot create nitric oxide properly. Actually, we
Mm.
are dependent. So
Mhm.
nitric oxide in the mitochondria is a byproduct of
Uh-huh.
energy production. We cannot when we cannot, or actually it's a negative byproduct.
Mhm.
But when we cannot expel it, it binds. It actually, your body tries to use it like oxygen because it has oxygen in it, right?
Mhm.
Oxide. And we get more mitochondrial dysfunction. We actually create more free radicals, cellular death, etc. But at the end of the day, we cannot even expand and create blood vessels.
Uh-huh.
So, and I think this is the next frontier of skin health, alongside other systems, by the way, again, like you mentioned, the liver, kidneys, etc. The health of your vasculature is the next frontier in the health of our supporting systems, let's say, and skin is one of them. So let's talk a little bit about GHK-Cu and vasculature. How does it, aside from what we said right now, how does it, again, how does it communicate directly with neovascularization or endothelial health?
Yeah, so what you just summarized really well there, and that could be a podcast in and of itself. Cellular metabolism and
Yeah.
the relationship of our skin to cellular metabolism. And I mean, I almost wanted to go down the lactic acid and the new research around lactate,
Yes, yes,
um,
yes.
like that rabbit hole, but we'll save that for another time.
Yeah,
So as far as vasculature is concerned, angiogenesis is
yeah.
concerned, um, copper peptides can stimulate VEGF, vascular
Hmm.
endothelial growth factor. And notice how I said copper peptides. That copper
Yes.
component is important. When we remove that, we remove that effect on vasculature. And what that does is that allows better blood circulation to go flow to the skin. And and again, we want to make sure that we're reducing fibrin as we're doing this, because alone GHK may not be antifibrinolytic enough.
Hmm.
So it may not be able to support that blood circulation enough. But
Hmm.
when it is able to, when we reduce that fibrin, and then support this, we can have we can improve circulation. And then
How would we do that? How would we reduce fibrin?
so fibrin, of course, we want to address those if there's a core issue where there is fibrin. Like for example, women with PCOS often have higher levels of circulating fibrin. And fibrin, just to explain it for those that don't know, it's a factor in the blood that can uh, slow down healing. It has some clotting like effects. And from a peptide perspective, one of the most efficient interventions is thymosin beta 4 or TB500. And the best way to actually stack that to reduce and impact fibrin is actually to take an oral fragment and the injectable at the same time. That's been found to be the most effective in reducing fibrin.
I wonder, is there any research around microdosing GLP-1s and fibrin?
I don't think there's you know what, I can't speak on that
Ma-
because I don't know if the research on microdosing GLPs has just
yeah,
moved so quickly,
yeah,
but I'm not entirely, sure if there's research on that yet, but I wouldn't be surprised because I
yeah.
think some of those anti-inflammatory pathways that we some of that reduction of ROS, I
Hmm.
actually don't think we fully understand the pathways that are involved with GLPs in that microdose context being
Okay.
so effective in like ROS and inflammation reduction. But
Yeah.
I actually think it is quite possible that they may have a big impact. Especially again, it's precision medicine. If that person would be benefiting from microdosing GLPs anyways, right? Like I would not benefit from microdosing GLPs, right? I don't that is not support that GLP support is not something my body needs. I'm a slimmer guy
Hmm.
who doesn't like get that hungry very often, so that would just not be good for me. So yeah, so that's kind of going back how fibrin would be addressed, and
Yeah.
then you really let GHK do its magic.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. One of the things that we do topically to support that is actually use neuropeptides, which have a feedback loop
Mhm.
to reduce the static noise of inflammation, and have been shown to reduce fibrin. For example, most people would know a peptide called arginine or hexapeptide 8, but
Mm.
although great, there is a lufacil, which is a different peptide, again, neural peptide still, which is stronger, and we actually use them in combination topically. I think without it, GHK-Cu is actually extremely overhyped, but
Mhm.
topically.
Mhm.
I always say inject it, but that is I love your anecdote there. So, what would be a protocol? What would be a substantiated protocol that you have seen used for and create results over and over and over again, like without people's, because there are some wacky ideas around GHKs, but like what is the protocol that you have seen produce favorable results?
Totally. So some of the clinical protocols were dose kind of low, and some biohackers took it upon themselves to see what happens if you dose a little bit higher, and to help us discover a safety profile of dosing a little bit higher. So some of the protocols have been like 2 milligrams a day, but a lot of what I've seen is like 4 milligrams a day is pretty it's pretty powerful and pretty effective for
Hmm.
the normal person. The younger you are when you do it, the more you're gonna notice it.
Hmm.
The 27-year-olds, the 25-year-olds I know that have done GHK even at between the 2 to 4 milligram range uh, dose in 2 to 4 weeks, everybody is like, "What's going on? What have you done to your skin? It looks so hydrated. It looks so clear. It looks so buoyant. Like there's
Yeah.
something that's changed." And then when we go to someone who's in their 40s and their 50s, it takes a little bit longer or a higher dose to get to that effectiveness. Now, I don't know what the term wacky or extreme means, but I think the protocol I'm about to share is kind of both wacky and extreme, but it works really, really well. And I'm sure you've heard of this, but it's the 1 milligram 10 times a day for 5 days, right? Like
Hmm.
that classic stack. And I have had only a few people that I've worked with do that, and it's never something that I'm like, hey, not that I'm ever, giving medical advice, but it's never something I'm like, hey, go do this, become a human pincushion, right?
Yeah.
Um, but for the few people that have had the discipline to inject themselves 10 times a day, it's pretty insane what happens in those 5 days. It's like it almost feels like they shed a whole layer and their skin just becomes transformative. It looks like they did like a few rounds of Botox without
Wow.
the side effects. So it's, so powerful. And then you follow that up for 2 milligrams for 2 weeks after that. And so then you have like in 2 to 3 weeks in like a 19-day protocol. And if you can stomach that, it's extremely efficient and effective.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of what was wanting to talk about. And then, are you doing a 1-to-1 ratio of rest, basically, or how would you how would you prevent the receptors from being deadened, from being attenuated, attenuation of response?
Absolutely. So for the 1 to 2 milligram dose ranges, they're usually like 30 days on,
Yeah.
60 days off, something like that. So for this, if you're gonna go this hard and this intense, my thing is you kind of want to go 60 days off after
Hmm.
this because you've used a lot of those receptors up.
Yeah.
Maybe you got a lot out of it. Maybe you had a movie role coming up and you wanted to look really fresh for that, or a modeling shoot, or some kind of a big interview or appearance or something, right? So
Hmm.
that's why we needed to speed it up. And then I do believe in that like 60-day rest period after that.
Hmm. Yeah, understood. What about, there are some companies like Level Up Health, I think they're
Uh-huh.
called, that have oral they have other oral peptides, but specifically they have oral GHK-Cu.
Hmm.
Uh, is that effective? If so, would someone be able to use that interchangeably with the injection? How does that play into effective regimen?
So I don't. Yeah, the oral can still have some fibroblast activity, but all the research I've seen on orals now there's some fascinating pro-drugs that are being developed, right? Like, for the listeners, I can think of liposomes as a form of pro-drug, right? Like an encapsulation where we're wrapping it in some kind of a lipid to increase absorption and or sort of make it a nano emulsion where it's absorbing through the mouth and
Hmm.
entering the bloodstream, right? And like, I don't know if we're allowed to say this, but there's a very popular company that's going to be releasing liposomal peptides soon. I think we all know
Yeah.
a lot of us know who that company is, and we'll see that in the market very very soon. But
Hmm.
as far as just the orals go, I find that they almost work differently and on different things, and I may use them clinically more for some of these things. So I think I have a hunch that oral increases superoxide dismutase more
Hmm.
and
Hmm. Hmm.
glutathione peroxidase
Hmm.
more.
Hmm.
And it has that sort of glutathione like antioxidant detox effect. So it's very effective as a combination anti inflammatory. But for our skin health, I just think that some of those chains and those reactions are being used up in the gut, and they're not really making it into
Yeah.
that far.
That's what we see a lot with oral, right? Like
Mhm.
whatever you would want at the end of the day to affect soft tissue has almost always direct application to your gut, and obviously vice versa. Like the king of peptides. I know you know what I'm going to say. BPC 157
Mhm.
is it's natural inhabitant, if you would, is your bio, like
Mhm.
it is a uh, gut existing peptide
Mhm.
that we are saying, this is the signal in the gut to repair your gut lining. Let's see what happens when you inject it. And lo and behold, it also is a signal to repair other soft tissue.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's gut versus injectable. It tends to have a very, very different effect, and even for energy, I find that it has
Hmm.
a a
Yeah.
different level of effect when we do injectable. Now, there's some people that I've seen this argument that if you sort of prepare the receptors with injectable, can you then switch to orals and have an efficacious response, more efficacious than if you just started with the orals? And there's some anecdotal that data that seems to point in that direction, but I don't think we have enough data for that.
I think you're right. I think we're not there, and I would agree with you that I would be skeptical.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, okay, so we talked about GHKCU, which is obviously the low hanging fruit here.
Hmm.
But But there are other peptides that are extremely, I mean, I don't know where to continue, to be honest, because I mean, let's just mention. I think it's worth a mention. Melanotan. I don't know if you think it's worth a mention, but it is going to affect your skin.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a better transition to melanotan is maybe starting with TB500, so we can
Okay.
frame a little bit of a discussion around what do you call it? Frame the discussion around
Yeah.
fibroblasts and fibrin that we spoke
Hmm.
about,
Yeah.
and then we can talk about that. So I think with TB500, one of the big thing that it's doing, if you just looked macroscopically, is again, it's working as an anti-inflammatory. Well, how is it doing that? It's modulating pro-inflammatory cytokines, right?
Hmm.
Um, and we see pro-inflammatory cytokines increase with age to some level,
Hmm.
and that has an effect on skin. So, of course, that has a greater effect on irritated skin, like autoimmune skin conditions. And we also see it having an effect on fibroblasts. We
Hmm.
see it helping the migration of keratinocytes.
Hmm.
And again, I think one of the big things is that VEGF component, and also the element with the collagen fibers as well, and just
Yeah.
supporting the rebuilding of collagen.
Yeah. I wanted to get back to TB500, and I think we should when
Mhm.
we talk about recovery from assault. I'm just going to call it assault.
Right.
Um, but I completely agree with you. One of the interesting thing about TB500 is its ability to. I mean, most of the peptides that we're going to be talking about,
Mhm.
we really don't need to let them know where we want results.
Right.
That's true for GHK. It's true GHK-Cu. It's
Mhm.
true for TB500 or TB4,
Mhm.
thymosin beta 4, thymosin beta 500. However, someone
Right.
is going to be
Mhm.
sourcing this. Now, so within that framework, um, what are other? So we mentioned that. What other peptides would you say um, are affecting our fiber, or not even fibrin, affecting our response to everyday collagen loss? I mean, we could mention any type of growth hormone increasing peptide here, but I don't know if we have more specific ones we want to cover.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually think from, from TB500 to growth hormone is a good framing. And then we can go
Hmm.
back to melanotan because it's working on some of those really unique
Yes,
alpha
yes.
receptors. So, a lot of people will go on growth hormone peptides, not for their skin health, not for even thinking about their skin, either to get stronger in the gym, to gain muscle, to restore energy, right? Or to help restore pituitary gland rhythms that were
Yeah,
disrupted from even like sinus infections, we know can disrupt pituitary
yeah.
gland rhythms.
Which
So,
on its own, which on its own is going to improve your skin because you're going to get better sleep.
what's that?
Which on its own, if nothing else,
Uh
you're going
huh.
to get great skin because you're going to get better sleep or
Absolutely.
better
Yeah.
circadian rhythm. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, my first experience with like salmonella and acetate, like 12 years ago, I mean, I slept like 9, 10 hours a night. It was
Wow.
insane, but it was restorative, but like almost disruptive in some ways to
Hmm. Hmm.
have to sleep that much. But yeah, like again, you know, by increasing the growth hormone secretion, it doesn't even matter what combo you're taking, CJC, ipamorelin, tesamorelin, ipamorelin combo, right? We always want that combo
Hmm.
in place, and those are the two combinations that I found to be most effective. The old
CJC and then ipamorelin or tesamorelin.
Exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And the older thing that we used to say was tesamorelin helps decrease visceral adipose tissue, VAT, more effectively than the other combo. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think people will have a different response to different combos.
Hmm.
I've responded better to CJC than tesamorelin, right? And that might be because I don't really have much visceral adipose tissue, right? I
Hmm.
don't know why that is, but that's just a pattern that I um see.
Hmm.
And growth hormone increases fibroblast activity. We see certain uh protein pathways like the GAK stat pathway, which seems to have a regenerative effect for the skin, right? And then we know that IGF-1 is going to be really, really important for its effect on tissue and the promotion of collagen and the proliferation of fibroblasts.
Hmm.
And I think one of the components that just from if we zoom back out from the science and just look at like, well, what do people notice in their skin when they do 3 months of this GH secretion peptide blend? They'll often notice that their elasticity improves and the skin structure improves over that period of time. It looks
Hmm.
a little bit tighter, right? It's
Yeah,
like, oh,
thicker maybe.
absolutely, a little
Yeah,
bit thicker. Yeah. So,
and there is data that a lot of people ask me. Obviously, I have a lot of friends that are rah jujitsu guys,
uh-huh,
but then
uh-huh.
they come to me one on one and they're like, so I have wrinkles around my eyes. What do you know,
Mhm,
what is a skincare for men? And I'm telling them, there is, it's the same thing. If anything, men have 25% on average more
mhm,
collagen,
mhm.
which comes down to more androgens, basically.
Interesting. Mhm,
Yeah, but a lot of it is the end of the day, it is the kind of intersection between vasculature and anabolic state that you are in more often, the state of growth that you are in more often.
mhm,
So when you talk about GH, when we say GH, just as a side note, we're talking about growth hormone. We're not kind of referencing GHK-Cu again.
right, right.
So GH and IGF-1, which is maybe the grandfather of things that are going to snap you into an anabolic, a building state.
Mhm,
These two have to have an impact on skin thickness, cellular turnover, skin barrier integrity, etc.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that that data, that anecdotal data you provided speaks for itself. I
Yeah.
think sometimes, growth hormone itself gets a bad rep through bodybuilding and people, may some listeners may be like, I know some people that do a lot of growth hormone and we're not seeing that effect on their skin.
Hmm.
Well, that's because they're hyper aging their skin with trenbolone,
Yeah.
primobolone and some of these other anabolic steroids. So they're almost, and also I do think there is some dose dependency to that pathway that you just explained. And I think,
Hmm.
when we go above a certain dose with a GH peptide or HGH, human growth hormone itself, like once we get above like the 5, 10, maybe 15 IUs, I think we start losing um that elasticity in
Yeah.
exchange for the anabolic effects.
Yeah. Certainly.
Hmm.
Great. So again, speaking on, and obviously there are other growth hormone secreting peptides.
Hmm.
Um, but I think you're right. I think for this discussion, the ones that people should be looking at are like CJC, ipamorelin slash
Hmm.
tesamorelin.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and now we're going to talk about something that increases growth hormone as well,
Hmm.
which is melanotan,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, so melanotan, and there are two types of melanotans, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So what is kind of the difference between like melanotan 1 and melanotan 2? And yeah.
Right, right. So Melanotan has, so one of them. is historically gets you more tan than the other
Mm-hmm.
one, right? And
Yeah.
the, they're also called alpha MSH, right? Alpha
Mm-hmm.
melanocyte stimulating hormone. Um, they're analogs of alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was famously said that one of them, Melanotan 1, gives you a tan and boners, right?
Yes.
I remember when it was just becoming popular, you would go to like the early peptide research conferences and you would see like that super jacked doctor that has like the weirdest tan. Um, and that was like a trend, and they were just like
Yeah.
using a lot of melanotan. Well, melanotan, it's binding to the MC1R receptor on the melanocytes, which
Mm-hmm.
is located in the basal layer of the epidermis. It's a G protein coupled receptor, and it does lead to various. It leads to melanin production.
Yeah.
So it also does have a really big effect on the immune system as well, like in that
Mm-hmm.
in between cascade. So, melanotan 2, which, in my experience is the safer form of
Mm-hmm.
melanotan. I don't know if you would agree with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's in that cascade, we see various immunologic effects.
Mm-hmm.
And we obviously know that MSH as a hormone plays a really important role in inflammation. It's often discussed in the mold illness world as well, right? I will often check MSH
Mm-hmm.
levels in people. And then there was certain theories floating around that for can you be more prone to certain types of inflammation if you have lighter skin because those pathways are not getting activated? And then without getting you the tanning effect, can melanotan to be helpful? So I do think that there are various ways that can happen, but I think going back to the skin health, I think it's profoundly anti-inflammatory, and it's also helping to repair those melanocytes.
Yes. And now that is an incredible point
Mhm.
because obviously there has been a big discussion around zombie cells or
Right.
senescent cells
Hmm.
in the longevity, anti aging, skin health world. Obviously, there are companies dedicated to lowering zombie cells or senescent cells in the skin.
Hmm.
We have had a product for a long time doing that. But what people don't know is that the number one cell that goes wrong and becomes senescent is actually your melanocytes.
Mm.
And that not only that, they are the most prolific at sending inflammatory signals throughout your system,
Hmm.
whether it is to your immune system, which you've referenced a second ago,
Hmm.
to your brain, to other types of skin cells, like you mentioned fibroblasts, but other ones as well. And really the melanocytes are the big culprits is in the zombie cell skin health discussion, and no one talks about it because obviously they are not affected by reduction of superficial senescent cells. They are
Hmm.
the way that we measure their impact on the skin as a whole in the skin science is by things like tyrosinase or basically um, post um, production of molecules post and pre the interaction with melanin, so or melanocytes. So
Hmm.
um, that's just saying it is 100% very important. The health of your melanocytes directly correlates to the health of your skin and how it looks.
Absolutely. And I think one other thing to add to that discussion is what is the role of melanocytes in protecting against UV radiation, right? Um,
Hmm.
the best skincare, and I'm not sponsored by Young Goose, but the best sun protection sunblock that I've ever used is the Young Goose sunblock by
Hmm.
far. And I'm a darker skin guy, so I see no white cast with that
Hmm.
product. But from a UV radiation perspective, our melanocytes have a role. And if we think about just skincare as a whole, Brian Johnson is right that UV is probably one of the things that is aging our skin faster than a lot of other things. So
Yeah.
it should be addressed. So kind of the rebuilding of melanocytes through the MITF pathway and that signaling, and then TRP1, TRP2, those biochemical processes are really, really important because that's sort of your natural protection against that type of cellular stress and the
Hmm.
various immune responses that can come from that cellular
Hmm.
stress as well.
Yes, there is no such thing as a solar callus,
Uh-huh.
as unless you're talking about the uh, increased expression of melanin.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who is talking, giving you some nonsense about the solar callus
Mm-hmm.
is misinterpreting our adaptation. But and that is something that is important to understand, is that the darker we are, we need to take care of other things like vitamin D synthesis,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not, there's no there's no perfect answer here, like that let's be like as dark as we can because we're going to protect our skin. No, we then need more UV in order to generate in order to generate vitamin D3. So there is something to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
um
Right.
but yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Absolutely, and then yeah, there's various other processes with the sunlight helping in the production of melatonin as well, right?
Yeah.
End up actually it's not just the cholesterol, vitamin D synthesis. It's also you need more sunlight for these various other mitochondrial and cellular processes as well. So then you end up at the same place. So you do just kind of need to protect your skin as well. But in the support of our melanocytes by using something like melanotan 2, right? We can end up increasing that regeneration. We can end up repairing some of those cellular processes so that they may work better, and then our skin can look better, along with various other positive immune effects as well.
Got it. Fantastic. I think because we were meaning to keep it short, and as usual, that's not my strong suit. Um, but let's talk. Let's ditch the discussion about I would say like insult driven
Mm-hmm.
repair and support. We'll do it. We'll do a follow up episode for that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a look at other ingredients, other components that you would think are positive as I would say standalone. I don't mean as in isolation. I mean without the need to introduce injury to the skin. What are some other uh, peptides components that you see driving skin health?
Right, absolutely. So in that in that list of just top peptides for building that
Yeah.
powerful skin stack, one I would add into that right after where it's in terms of efficacy is KPV. KPV is just three amino acids: lysine, proline, and valine. Right, it's a very small chain. It's very anti-inflammatory. People know it's popular from a mast cell stabilization, histamine reduction perspective, right?
Uh-huh.
And it kind of just stops there. It also has antifungal properties as well. And people often see it as a treatment peptide for stabilizing mast cells and or acute skin inflammation. But I love
Mm-hmm.
this discussion because we're talking about the biochemistry of salutogenesis, right? Of optimization, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens if someone wants to they have good skin and they take KPV, right? So I'm an example of this. I have pretty good skin. I take care of my skin and I do all the protocols. And what happens when someone like me takes KPV? So it's it's blocking again those inflammatory cytokines. And even in
Mm-hmm.
that salutogenic state of optimization, it can be beneficial to block some of those, very lightly block some of those inflammatory cytokines like nuclear factor kappa beta, and it also helps to support, again, keratinocyte migration, fibroblast activation. It improves the tight junctions between skin. And that tight junction obviously helps with what's called leaky skin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sort of skin permeability, which is really, really important. And there's this whole other tangent I'm not going to go down, but I'm just going to tease a little bit because it's very, very relevant. And in the mold world, there's been a big discussion around this bacteria that's in water damaged buildings called actinobacteria or actinomyces. And there's some research that Dr. Richie Shoemaker is pointing towards where topically it can penetrate and enter the bloodstream and
Wow.
lead to some crazy inflammatory cascades. And as this research is sort of just opening up, one of the first things I'm exploring, since I do end up doing a lot of work with people that are affected by mold and water damaged buildings, is that is the actino process worsened when someone maybe has a presentation of leaky skin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the diagnostics for that, I think, are gonna evolve. And I know that you're cooking something up for that skin testing, and you've been thinking about that. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
helping to repair that junction, and then this discussion around like, well, how does something like KPD? Is it just the immune cascade? In which it's helping to repair that tight junction by removing those insults? Or does it have to do with the way that it's helping to regulate um, macrophages and mast cells in releasing histamine? And maybe is it even in its slight antifungal properties where it's sort of regulating or modulating the microbiome, and that's
Mm-hmm.
having an effect on the tight junctions of the skin. I'm not sure about like what those pathways are, but I've just seen it work in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll give two anecdotes about that. One is when I got my eyebrow completely opened up
Uh-huh.
and went to the ER in like I don't know 11 at night and got it glued like really badly. You recommended VIP. I ordered sorry KPV. I ordered some KPV from you, and we kind of we had it in a nose spray, which I would
Mm.
spray actually on my cut,
Uh-huh.
and the results are ridiculously good. Like
Mhm.
no one even believes I had like I show photos of it, and people cannot believe that.
Mhm.
Um, and that's something we're obviously going to discuss in our episode about assault
Uh-huh.
mitigation. Um, the other thing is shout out to Ben Greenfield emailing me about someone that has this
Steroid
with
withdrawal.
steroid withdrawal. Thank you very much. I
Mhm.
wanted to say testosterone withdrawal. That would not have been the same thing. Steroid withdrawal, and one of the recommendation was KPV, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It seems to, yeah, it seems to be very reparative for people
Hmm.
dealing with steroid withdrawal. And just to discuss that a little bit because it's relevant. Steroid withdrawal is when you've been, prescribed
Hmm.
hydrocortisone, or high dose budesonide or some other type of steroid, either
Hmm.
in your sinuses or your skin or oral. And it's becoming very, very hard for you to detox, and the skin becomes dependent on it, but it tends to degrade over time.
Yeah.
So something that I've seen with the sinuses a lot more than with the skin, because I don't, I haven't seen a lot of those really severe skin clinical cases, but with the
Mhm.
sinuses, I have seen KPV reverses steroid,
Wow.
which is just incredibly. That's a big, big, powerful result, because this is where, like, we're not just talking about repairing and optimizing. We're talking about a very complex condition that doesn't really have a lot of hope through the conventional approaches,
Yeah.
because people just a lot of these people, they they live and they die with uh, a steroid prescription for their entire life, and the system gets weaker. And
Yes.
then they get prednisone face, right? Moon face, which
Mhm.
the fat accumulates around the cheeks, and the face gets bigger, and they feel unattractive, and they're putting on body fat and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so let's talk about honorable mentions, things that we we didn't reach the top of the list, but we should mention them. What do you think?
Yeah, so one of them that I think we didn't get we weren't able to talk about too much is, BPC 157 for skin. It's
Yeah,
the king.
yeah,
People forget about the king sometimes because they're doing the nuanced approaches, but in your stack, don't forget about BPC 157. It's always going to be powerful and helpful for just a multitude
yes,
of things, and two pathways that it works on that maybe the other peptides don't, is tumor necrosis factor alpha
hmm
and interleukin 6, which we know
hmm
is very relevant. Both of those are very, very relevant for various autoimmune conditions.
hmm
And then some other ones that we didn't get to talk about too much is VIP, which
yeah,
has which again is used in the chronic illness world quite a bit for
hmm
stabilizing the immune system and helping actually to regrow brains. And something that I've been really, really interested in lately, looking at these biochemical pathways, is top-down processes, right? Like, of course, I'm a big microbiome person, and the microbiome influences the brain, right? The brain also influences the microbiome, but there's a lot of processes, and earlier in this discussion that you mentioned, that are top down, they're brain to body, right?
yeah,
So I wonder with VIP, it's it almost has like a niacin like effect and a flushing effect
hmm
and possibly a detox effect. But I've seen some data with brain MRIs that VIP can help reverse gray matter atrophy,
wow,
which obviously is just huge, because then where someone could develop early neurodegeneration when they have gray matter atrophy, and this is very, very common right now with a lot of the
hmm
autoimmune things people are dealing with, and VIP helping to regrow that, um, does that powerful brain signaling effect downstream through HPAT activation and regulation, help the skin and help the skin repair tight junctions and have better signaling, and automatically, naturally, through T regulatory cells, uh, do some of these things that these peptides are doing, right?
I'm sure it does. I mean, one of the things, and we'll finish with that, but one of the things that I try to talk about as much as I can about taking care of your skin, and again going back to senescent cells, is that senescent cells in the skin, whether it is immune cells, different skin cells, we mentioned melanocytes. What they do, actually, they hijack the skin brain axis and affect your HPA-T.
Mhm,
So,
mhm,
um,
right.
um, hypothalamic,
Mhm,
pituitary, adrenal axis there.
mhm, mhm.
So, and then obviously we get into all of the cortisol effect and everything that we talked about before. But listen, ways we are going to immediately when this is done, let's schedule another podcast, at least another one, because we have a lot to go over, and I adore you. I adore the work that you are doing, and I want people to get as much of you as I am allowed to provide. So
Beautiful. It's always so fun discussing with you, Amite. You are just the way you go into the science and the biochemistry. I think it provides such a fun discussion for everyone. So always so much fun to be here and looking forward to the next time.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Bye. See you next time.